Hi, and welcome back to David Pattinson's Accused Friends. I've been going down to the supermarket through this health crisis, and it seems like every time I walk through the door, there's a big announcement on the loudspeaker about how the company is going out of its way to protect vulnerable people. And you switch on the news, and it's all about we're doing everything we can to help vulnerable people, and we're living our whole lives at the service of vulnerable people. And it's like, why is Britain, this great country of great history and great success, constantly pandering to the vulnerable and discriminating against the strong? And, I want to do a video on imagining what Britain would be like based on strength as opposed to vulnerability, and, imagining the changes we need to make to get to that point. And I've written down a handful of things here, and I want to share them with you. So the first thing to get Britain to become a country based on strength is to get rid of our total dependence on debt. Our government has a total debt of £2 trillion. They spend 100 billion more each year than they take in. And, that deficit just increases our debt and makes us more vulnerable to creditors and to a crisis like this. We can't react quickly enough because we don't have the cash reserves. We're not a creditor nation. Go back just over 100 years ago to the end of the 19th century, and we were a creditor nation. We were the richest country in the world. The pound was the reserve currency of the world, and we've lost our way. We need to get back to getting rid of a dependence on debt and personal debt. We've got to encourage savings more. We have easy credit, we have low interest rates, and people are taking on debt all the time through things like student loans or credit card debts. And no one has great savings and great reserves of money stashed away, so that when they have to take 30 or 45 days off work, or they lose their job, there's no reserves for them, and we become dependent on the government. Next thing to get rid of debt is absolutely no bailouts. I've done a video on this, and I have no time for bailouts. It totally distorts the market with the moral hazard. And again, we're giving away taxpayer money to prop up businesses that the market doesn't want. When a company is in financial trouble or on the verge of bankruptcy, the market the company is telling us that the market doesn't want what they're producing, or it doesn't want it at the price they're producing. So instead of letting it go bankrupt and so another producer can come in and run it efficiently or provide that good or service efficiently, we borrow money or we steal money from taxpayers to prop it up. And, we're still left with the inefficient company that's going to continue to be in financial trouble. And it sends out totally the wrong message that if you are financially prudent, you get punished. If you are financially reckless, you get rewarded. That's not the message we want. Next way of getting rid of debt is smaller government. We need to be shrinking the size of government. In these crisis times, government expands, liberty contracts. It needs to be the other way around. If we want to get back to a nation of strength, we need to get government much, much smaller, get rid of all the wasteful spending, things like the foreign aid, things like pandering to all the needy groups of society and giving them free money. And I think we've reached the point now where we need to totally eliminate the income tax. Income tax was introduced as a temporary measure. It's become a permanent measure. It's become 50% of the economy, and the country was never set up to be this way. Government was set up to be very, very limited and to defend the freedoms of the British people. It was not to be designed to be this all-expansive, domineering force in society and crushing the liberty of people. Government can make money through tariffs and through sales tax, but they're not going to be discriminating against or disincentivizing income and earnings anymore. Any money that British people earn is theirs to keep, as it should be. Next key point I wanted to make about getting Britain back to a country based on strength is getting the government totally out of our healthcare. There's been so much propaganda through this lockdown of how great the NHS is, and I've did a video talking about that. A lot of people say, look, the NHS is the crown jewels of the country and all this kind of nonsense. The NHS isn't a destination. It is not a thing. It's an exchange. It's healthcare services paid for by taxpayer money. There's a lot of great people that work in there, so why don't we hire them for ourselves? They can be private medical suppliers to us, and we can have a system based on health savings and health insurance that incentivizes healthy living. If you're a healthy person, you're a fit person, you have a great diet, you are going to spend very, very little money in your life on healthcare services, and you are going to have more money for yourself. Whereas if you are someone that is not healthy, that is lazy, that has a bad diet, that takes risks with their health, that's your right as a free citizen, but you're going to be financially penalised. Instead, with the NHS, we have it the other way around. And of course, the whole justification for this lockdown was that the NHS isn't big enough to deal with, all the liabilities to the taxpayers who pay for it. So they have to lose their freedom and be put under house arrest. And it's totally, totally wrong. If free citizens are dealing with their own healthcare, government has nothing to do with it. They're totally out of the way, and people can make their own healthcare decisions, whether they want to go out and get sunlight, live their lives, take risks, whether they want to self-isolate, stay at home, stay in the dark. Totally up to the free citizen what they do. And, all this nonsense about compulsory vaccinations and compulsory this, compulsory that is absolutely not appropriate, and it's unlawful. The government doesn't have a right to interfere with people's health choices. That's totally at the discretion of the free citizen. Next point I want to make is about welfare. We need to get rid of the welfare state that's totally dominated our country. People need to get back to being independent citizens, supporting themselves and their families. People shouldn't be having lots of children if they can't afford to even support themselves. We need to totally get back to promoting strong families and marriage. I'm a big proponent of marriage. I think we need to totally remove the state from the institution of marriage. And we need to get back to strict rules about no welfare for children born out of wedlock. Women who want to have children, which a lot of British women do, they need to find a husband, they need to get married, and then they need to have children within that marriage structure. And that's the healthiest outcome for women. It's the healthiest outcome for society. It's the healthiest outcome from children as well. Next point I want to make is sort of restoring the law and getting back to the principle of the British people are a free people. They give their powers to the government, and the government's powers are limited. And we need to get back to promoting the constitutional rights and the civil liberties of British people, and I want it to be much more widespread. It's rare we talk about the English Bill of Rights and the sort of Bill of Rights of the people, and it needs to be emphasised and re-emphasised over and over again. That's what strong societies do. That's what strong Britain used to do when it was a strong country, rather than a country that was constantly promoting victimhood and vulnerability like it does now. I want to get back to freedom of speech. All the British people have a responsibility for allowing others to speak. We've got to promote dissent. We have to promote voices we don't agree with. We have to re-emphasise that everyone has a right to free speech, and we need to take a very, very dim view of censorship. We need to get rid of our reliance on these big American companies for our communications, like Google and Facebook and YouTube. We need to get rid of all of them out of our society and have different platforms that we can communicate easily on. We don't need people in Silicon Valley censoring our communications and censoring our right to free speech. And, we really need a digital Bill of Rights to ensure all this, where we have platforms that are managed by independent British people, free of government and free of censorship. And, I think the corporate media monopoly with the TV channels needs to be ended as well. I'm a major advocate of freedom of the press, but the corporate media is not freedom of the press. It's corporate propaganda, it's government propaganda, and the stories that they want to promote are shown. The stories that they don't want to promote are either ridiculed or not shown at all. And, we need to get back to citizen journalism and really, really strengthening free speech. The next point on the law is really restoring the right to innocent until proven guilty. There's so much now in our public discourse about presuming guilt, politically incorrect actions and statements, and yet the person accused has not had their right to a day in court. They've not had the right to defend themselves in court with a jury of their peers, and there's such a rush to judgment all the time about people's behaviour. And we really need to get back to restoring innocent until proven guilty. It's been the same through this lockdown. The British people have been presumed to be unhealthy when they might be perfectly healthy, and they've been penalised for the presumption of being unhealthy when they were not given the right to defend themselves. I think it's totally wrong. So I think next point I want to have is a real focus for our country on immigration. There's been such a emphasis through our life, or through my life, about how immigration is such a great thing and it creates this rich cultural diversity for our country. And I think we've got to the point now where we've experienced so much rich cultural diversity, I feel like we're taking advantage of other countries, and it's now time for us to be going out into the world so other countries can experience our rich cultural diversity for themselves. Let's send British people to places like Pakistan and Madagascar and Somalia and Poland and all these great countries so they can experience some cultural diversity from Britain. Why are we the ones that are always enjoying the cultural diversity? Why can't other countries enjoy it too? We need to start getting British jobs for British citizens and British companies offering British jobs. And, I want a real emphasis on our country, our production, our goods and services, our jobs. And, that's how you get a country based on strength rather than a country reliant on other people or other entities and dependent and vulnerable. And, that's not what we want. So we're going to have a very, very secure borders, a very, very rigid and immigration system based on merit to the British people, not based on merit to the immigrant. So I think, final point to promote strength is just to sort of re-emphasize it constantly through our public discourse. I've got to really make the point that we really have to reject the description of British citizens as victims. I mean, I've covered all these false accusation cases in courts. We're always talking about, women as victims and all this sort of stuff. I mean, women have had so many rights given to them, and yet we still let them get away with all this victimhood nonsense. We're always talking about women, how they can do any job a man can do. But why don't we get them back to doing what only women can do, which is having children? Let's get our birth rates up. Any polling of British women shows that the vast majority want to have many, many children, more than 2, more than 3. And, yet our birth rate declines every year because we're constantly pushing women out into the workplace, which is more tax for government, which is lower labour costs for corporations, and it leads to the total destruction of the British family. And that's not what creates a strong country. That's what creates a country that is based on vulnerability. So 3 key points to take away is really restoring Britain based on justice, opportunity and freedom. And, I think it's really up to us as kind of a sort of a younger generation of society. I'm in my 30s and, restoring a great country cut adrift with this 2020 recession. It's the second bailout of baby boomer retirees. The first one was back in 2008, and as they'd lost all their retirement in the 2008 financial crisis, the government came in, took money from younger generations, propped baby boomer retirements back up so they can have a great 30-year retirement, and now we're doing it a second time in 2020. When is it the time of younger generations to have the focus on them, and where we stop stealing the money from working people and from younger people and sometimes unborn people to prop up people that are constantly making financial mistakes and financial mismanagement? So I hope you like this video. Made some general points here, but I want to get everyone thinking about restoring Britain to a country of strength rather than constantly accepting this narrative of vulnerability. It's got to end, otherwise we're just going to talk ourselves into total collapse. So please subscribe to the channel and look forward to talking with you soon.